Honor and delight to have Rabbi Uri Topolosky here, someone who I've looked up to as a teacher, mentor, Rebbe, as a chaver, and to have him here in person is amazing. And he is serving as the rabbi of Kehilat Pardes, as the president of the Board of Rabbis of Washington, and as the chair of the Beltway Vod, and doing much more. And is really a humble community builder and thinker. And we went to the same yeshivat Chovevei Torah. So thanks for taking time to
honor to be here.
Some Torah. So I want to explore a Torah which I know is very fundamental for you in your rabbinate and in your avodat Hashem in general, of a theology, a Torah of uncertainty, as you've described it, a Torah of uncertainty. And I wonder, firstly, sort of what do you mean by this idea of uncertainty, and where does that come from in broader sense of Torah for you?
So the Torah of Uncertainty, which is really close to my heart and really animates my rabbinate, makes me think about every aspect of it, comes, I think, from a few different places, but one of my favorite places is from the Ishbitzer Rebbe, great Rebbe of Chassidut, Rabbi Mordechai Leiner of Ishbitz. And the Ishbitzer Rebbe points out the first of the 10 commandments. I am the Lord your God. Simple. But in Hebrew, not so simple. In Hebrew, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And he points out that it should have said, Ani Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem your God. I am the Lord your God. But instead it says, Anochi, which we also translate as, I am the Lord your God. But in the Hebrew, there's a big difference, says the Ishbitzer Rebbe, between Anochi and Ani. And he says the difference is the Hebrew letter Chaf. And the Hebrew letter Chaf, when we use the Hebrew letter Chaf before a word, it means as if, or like, something that's similar to.
Right.
And the Ishbitzer Rebbe says that the hint in this letter, in the first of the 10 commandments, is that while we have a sense of what the Lord your God is, we only have a sense, a little bit, a taste, not a fullness of it. And it's a reminder that we as human beings only can know so much. We can only know so much. When we get into a place of absolutism, of knowing what is certain, of knowing what God wants 100% from us, that, I think, is a dangerous place and leads us to certain fundamentalist thinking and maybe not so healthy. And it ties into what I think the message of monotheism is in general. The message of monotheism, that there is one God, is that there is only one that knows. Not you, not me, not other gods or other things. Only God ultimately knows. And that requires a little spiritual humility and what I believe the Torah of uncertainty. And being able to embrace a little bit of uncertainty in the positions that we feel proud of, in the things that we love, in the Torah we believe in, but to also know that Anochi is, we don't fully know anything 100% because we're human and only God knows. So that Torah plays itself out in lots of places, but it's rooted there. And something that I think we have to hold on to very strong.
It's interesting. Today, I think in many ways, to be religious or to be frum in our community means I accept with complete faith and I am certain of my view. It's almost like the more certain you are, the more religious you are, right? Whereas it used to be, I think, maybe I'm romanticizing the past, that being religious meant you were full of awe and wonder for what was unknown. There was a humility attached to uncertainty, right? And who am I to say, right? As opposed to being so clear. So I wonder if we can reverse that actually this living with yirah, with awe, is actually fundamental to religiosity in some sense.
Well, I think that's the key point right there, because yirah has been taken not to mean awe, right? Awe is you are awestruck by a wonder that you can't explain. That, like, wow, that you didn't even realize it was there. Whoa, this is amazing. I didn't anticipate it. It blows you away. It moves you because you were surprised, perhaps. Right? But instead, we like often in our community, yirah as fear. And fear means, here's a line, don't cross it.
Right.
Black and white.
Right.
And that, I think, is not awe. It's a very different experience, important sometimes and needed, but black and white is different than color. Yeah. And yira as awe is color. And yira as fear is black and white. Mm-hmm. And these are two different approaches, I think, that we take often in our religious world. Yeah. And make a big difference.
So let's think about how we might apply this. Someone who says, oh, I agree theologically, and Torah is about living with the tension of only having a small part of the picture, small part of the truth, and living with the yira beyond that. So I said, well, how might we apply this in thinking about pluralism, relationships within the Jewish community, the other denominations, and maybe even pluralism beyond, into the interfaith realm as well? How might you apply this Torah in that realm?
You know, you take another famous Torah, there's a famous Talmudic story of Tanur Shalachnai, the oven of Achnai. Yeah. It's a story of rabbis disagreeing. Right. Okay, so before you pull it way out, start close, and you think about a group of rabbis disagreeing. And ultimately, that story is about the fact that even though one rabbi feels that he has the truth, and he can summon miraculous wonders, and he can even summon in the Talmud the bat kol itself, the voice of heaven that says, this rabbi is right. He knows the answer to this question. But all the other rabbis in the room say, that's not how we function. Lo b'shamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven, right? We follow a majority opinion. And so we overrule the singular voice, even though the voice of God supports it. That tells me that Torah is not about emet. It's not about truth. It's about interpretation and about recognizing that there are a variety of voices around the table. So sometimes when we're seeking truth, then we have to sit on our laurels and say, well, this is orthodoxy, this is truth, we can't listen to anything else. But I also think that this Talmudic story reminds us that truth is about hearing different voices a little bit, about bringing a collective into the room. And not about sitting on truth, emet, but maybe sitting on shalom. And when you sit with shalom a little bit, you hear different voices in the room. When you sit on emet, it's hard to hear other voices. So you start to think about how if yirah is not about fear of another denomination, of what somebody else is teaching, but is about awe, about being willing to listen, to hear something that you might not have thought of. And you're confident in your own values, in your own ideas, in your own understanding of halakha, of your own rebbe, of your own teachers, but you're also moved by turning the corner and seeing something that someone else might be teaching or learning, and being able to have that voice in the conversation. To me, it's about bridging, it's about opening ourselves to new ideas and new people. It's about sensing a larger sense of who our community is. There's my favorite Midrash in the Torah. You could read it as 4 words. Yeah. The Jewish people crossed the sea. They're going to the other side. The Midrash says when the sea split and the Jewish people are born as they leave Egypt, going through the birth canal of the sea, that miminam umismolam, the water split to the right and to the left. Says the Midrash, there were chomot v'chomot, there were walls and walls, which we interpret to mean there wasn't one path, there were 12 paths that split in the sea. Yeah. If the Midrash stopped there, it would be beautiful, right? There's different ways to cross, we're all going to the same place, but the Midrash doesn't stop there. And the rabbis say, not only were there walls and walls, chomot v'chomot, there were chalonot v'chalonot. There were windows in each of the walls. And when you think about windows in walls, so then you realize that the Midrash is urging us that as you take your path, don't forget to see the others on their paths. Don't forget to listen to their Torah, to see them as people, and allow that also to animate the path that you're on.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so I think that if I were to suggest 2 things that we are globally plagued with today, one I would identify as a fundamentalism or an absolutism. I have the only truth and everyone else lives in a world of sheker. They live in lie and darkness. The other path is to say, we don't know anything that's true. We don't know anything that's good. A radical relativist camp. I don't need to engage with anything really because who knows? And I think this middle camp of is I need to walk my channel. I need to walk in my path, but I need the humility to have these windows into the other paths. The sense that I need to act on what I understand to be good, but I need to be able to listen to what others think is good and be prepared to respond to that as well.
You have a beautiful story, I think, that captures this.
Yeah.
When I served as a rabbi in New Orleans, my first Rosh Hashanah, we were in temporary space because our synagogue had been destroyed in Hurricane Katrina. And the Reform Temple called our president and said, come, you should have a place to daven. And they gave us a chapel in their building, which we davened in. And that first Rosh Hashanah, I was there. We're in their chapel space, packed in, 150 people, like crowded in. And there was a set of double doors that had windows in them that separated this chapel from the social hall of the Reform Temple. On Rosh Hashanah, the social hall was filled with their overflow seating. So you could see through these window panes others on the other side who were davening in the Reform Temple from our Orthodox minyan. And we hit the Amidah, and our packed room went silent, and everyone's focusing in their silent meditative prayer. And at that moment, the cantorial soloist, Tori May, she hits her high note. And like, whoa, and it wafts underneath the doors into our room, fills the whole space. And I'm sitting there like, oh my, this is not proper for an Orthodox synagogue. And I look up from my Amidah, and I look around the room, and the smiles on people's faces. It was so touching. There was this instant moment of recognition. We are here because of the generosity, the love, the achdut, the brotherhood that was felt by this temple, that opened its doors, gave us our space to be. We're not one, we're not the same. In fact, being so close to each other for many years that we were davening in that space until we built our own shul, it actually made everyone say, hey, it's New Orleans. Wait, why are we so distinct from Reform? Why am I distinct from Orthodox? Help each shul better identify as its own movement, understand better what it means to be Orthodox and why I care that I'm an Orthodox synagogue and not Reform, and help me grow in my identity, and at the same time appreciate the closeness and the connection with the windows and the walls that we had to each other.
Beautiful story. Wow. So moving from relationships, how would you apply the Torah of Uncertainty to the realm of halakha, the realm of Jewish law? And if it is lumped together, or maybe theology as well, maybe that's a separate category for you, I'm not sure. But how would that apply to how we think about that world?
Yeah, you know, I think when you work in community life, you know, I remember my first sheila, my first question I ever was asked as a rabbi. I finally became a pulpit rabbi. I was an assistant rabbi in a large synagogue, and I have my office and my phone, and I'm sitting there my first day. And there was many rabbis in the building, but on that day, apparently no one else was around. And a call came into the secretary downstairs, and she patched onto the speaker, there's a rabbinic question on line 1. And I was like, yes, my first rabbinic question. You know, and we had studied, I knew the halachot of meat and milk, and what happens if milk drops into a chicken soup, and like, okay, I've got it covered. Or maybe it's a question about avelut and mourning, and I can figure that out because I know the halacha. Or maybe it's a question about personal status, or like, you know, all the things that we spent all those years studying. So I pick up the phone, and I'm ready to answer my first rabbinic question. Rabbi, I just ran over my tefillin with my car. What do I do? You know? And of course, amazing. Like you realize that most of the questions we get as rabbis, they're not black and white. They're not certain answers. What happens when someone dies and they were young, or where's my loved one now? Or the questions that animate our people, that bring us, even most of the kashrus questions that we get, they're not always black and white. Most of the time, they're gray. There's not certain answers to everything. I can't open up my English book off the shelf, turn to page 98 and say, here's your answer. Right? There's so many factors that come into play. And most of the time, I'm not even answering the question, I'm answering the questioner. Right? I'm answering the person and the human being behind the question and their circumstance. Uncertainty, the Torah of Uncertainty is, don't shoot with your answer right away. hold back for a second. Be uncertain as to the situation. Ask questions.
Right.
Understand the person,
Yeah.
where they're coming from, what the issues are.
Yeah.
Do your research, because you don't know. Things have changed in every field all the time. And you have to check out, is the medical issues all the same as they were 10 years ago?
Right.
Is the kosher situation the same as it was 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? These things change. And being less certain sometimes as the one giving the halachic religious guidance
Yeah.
can help you be a better listener.
Right. Beautiful.
And that's very important.
And I think while it's very important to consult and get advice from experts, this and that we oftentimes can't outsource. We can't just take that burden off and say, there is a person who holds all the truth out there, and that person's just going to swoop in and give the answers from far away. There's the emotional intelligence that is part of the details of this complexity, and the uncertainty of having to take that on oneself as an individual or as a rabbi, to say we have to live with that. We can get advice, but we can't just send this and get the certain answer back from New York or Israel.
Yeah. I've been very concerned about centralization of authority in the Orthodox world, and the ability to say we can create an answer over here, and if you fly here, then we can solve this halachic question, or being able to recognize that the local rabbi working with their community understands the people better, the issues that animate that region geographically better. And can be more in touch. And obviously that rabbi has to be responsible, has to be learned, has to have their mentors and their colleagues that they connect with. But, I think we don't want to take it out of the hands of that place too. And because otherwise then it becomes encyclopedic and academic and no longer personal. It becomes certain facts that I know. And that to me is not answering the question.
Agreed. Okay, so you didn't talk about theology there, and we've touched on it, but I'd love to hear sort of how you think about, there's a whole lot of theological tenets that come with traditional Judaism, and how does uncertainty kind of apply there?
A lot. I mean, I think part of this was the monotheism idea, and recognizing that, that you're placing ultimate authority and certainty in the hand of one place, right? In the hand of God. And that has to pull you back a little bit. But I also think that there's power in recognizing that God itself manifests in all humanity. We are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And in some ways, I believe that means that every person carries a bit of that truth. Right? And unless you have every person sitting around the table, how can you have a total sense then of what is the divine will and what it is that we are meant to understand and appreciate? So the more we bring those voices around the table, the more we have a better appreciation of what God is. And when we have less voices around the table and less different types of colors and stripes and peoples, I have a less of a sense of what God wants of me. And I think that's important.
I love that you extended it to relationships, because where I would have gone automatically is to say, look at the sources. And Rambam's God is very different from the Hasidic God. Right? And if you look at the spectrum of that God and the plethora of ideas of Torah min hashamayim, what does it mean that God gave the Torah? Well, some people say, sign up. Do you believe it or not believe it? Well, what are we talking about, actually? Philosophically and theologically, it's very complex. And there's thousands of sources that deal with this question of revelation. And what is the messianic idea? So you take a lot of these theologies, just looking at the sources, we see the license to embrace a whole range of views. And the fact that there's not one dogma, but many views, automatically, in my view, gives the license to say, we can be uncertain because our sources are collectively uncertain. But going to the relationships is all the more powerful to say that the godliness within us is a dimension of that divine manifestation in the world. And there's this great Chassidic Torah I learned recently from Rav Herzl around that in fact we're not only created in the image of God, but we create God in our own image. That's a psychological insight. But our projection, our creation of God in our image emerges from our own godliness, from our own Tselem Elohim. And so because of where it emerges, it's also true. Right? Or the Ma'or Vashem, which says, why does it say Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov? Should have said God once, and then Elokei Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Because each one had Kiviyachol, a different God, a different divinity that they were attached to. And so to see that, to say, it's okay, right? That if you're not totally sure of there is a God, or not totally sure which God you believe in, or not totally sure of what it means, a revelation, or what that even experience is like, that living with that uncertainty is part of being religious.
It's interesting you mentioned Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, because the first place that phrase appears in the Torah, which a phrase now that is embedded in our Amidah, our most famous prayer, we all know those words, but it comes, I think Chazal intentionally chose it, it comes from the sneh, from the burning bush. God introduces itself to Moses in that way. It's the first time that phrase appears. And what is Moses? So first of all, think about the moment. Moses is incredibly uncertain. Moshe Rabbeinu is wondering, who's calling? And I'm turning away because I'm not sure I should see. And God says, no, turn to look. And Moshe says, well, who, me? I'm not your guy. I'm not this person. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in his character, which is what is attractive, I think, about Moshe as the future leader. And more than that, the Kutzker Rebbe, there's a famous notion that there's a fire burning in the desert. People don't see it. Lots of shepherds saw it. But only Moshe was so uncertain to ask the question, why is that happening? What's going on over there? Let me go find out and see. Everybody else, it didn't matter to them, because they had some certain idea of what it should be or what it shouldn't be, and they just kept walking. But Moshe allowed the question to emerge, and because he was curious, because he was uncertain of what he was seeing, and that moved him to think deeper, he stops, and then he's standing in front of a bush, and that makes him humble. God says, "Take off your shoes," right? Because he's encountering God. This is a big moment. Your head swells. My Ima always said, wear a big kippah to hold your head in. But Moshe takes off his shoes and he feels the earth between his toes. And God reminds Moshe that he's humble, that he's mortal. Like, you're here. You're on this earth. There's a very powerful moment there that ties into all this for me.
And going one step further with that, the divine manifestation in the Snet and in the Ukal, that this burning bush that is not consumed, going back to these two polar threats. One threat is the radical relativism, where there's no fire, nothing's burning at all, right? I'm not actually passionate or committed to anything. And there's the other one that I'm so on fire that I'm going to burn you. But this is a Snen and Ukal. I'm on fire, but I'm not consumed and I don't consume.
That's such a beautiful Torah. Because I think about this idea, when I'm on fire, what do? I strap bombs to my chest and I walk into a cafe and I detonate. Because I'm on fire I burn everything. That's right. But your Torah there is inenu ukal. I'm on fire, but I don't have to burn you.
Exactly.
That's such a beautiful idea. But this is the problem of certainty. Is it's a fundamentalism that burns everything around it sometimes. And we have to be very careful. We can be certain in our thoughts and our ideas, but uncertain in some other ways too. You have to find that balance. And I love the way you're bringing that in.
So my last question for you, unless you want to throw anything else in, is the realm of social justice, the realm that we are charged as Jews and human beings to make the world better, not just improve ourselves, very important, not just improve our families, very important, not just improve Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, very important, but we are here to make the world more just for vulnerable populations. In that world too, we see a lot of fervency, and I wonder how we bring uncertainty into that activist world as well.
It reminds me of there was an article written when I was in New Orleans. A big deal there were these oil rigs being built in the Gulf of Mexico, and Shell built a huge one called Ursa, massive 40-story tall oil rigs. Hard to imagine how large these things are. We learned the tragedy of the Deepwater Horizon one that exploded a piece and people were killed and oil spill. But there was a Harvard Business Review did a study. They brought in a Holocaust survivor actually to work with the men on the oil rig, because Shell was afraid there's accidents are happening all the time, and why are these accidents happening and how do we stop them? And more than that, now we're building this mega platform. That means the accidents are just getting bigger. So how do we fix this? So they did all these workshops, where they wanted men, these tough guys, to get in touch with their feelings and embrace uncertainty as a way of preventing accidents. How? Because I can't figure out how to pull this crank, but I'm not going to ask for help.
Right.
I'm not asking for directions. Too proud. So what happens is I force it too hard, it cracks, someone gets hurt, right? We make mistakes. So they broke down the culture to encourage a culture of saying, I don't know. I'm uncertain. I'm not sure how to do this. And that, apparently, Harvard Business Review did this study where it brought down the accident rate 80% company-wide over the next year. It's just incredible, the idea of creating vulnerability, creating uncertainty, and how that helps improve millions of pieces, including safety in the workplace. But I think it also applies in lots of other ways. We're eating a certain way. Wait a minute. Is there a better way that we can be eating? Can I ask for help from people that are studying nutrition or diet or global economy, or how this is impacting certain markets or peoples or animals or land or the environment? Let me be a little more uncertain. Not certain, there's no problem here. Or let me think about poverty or my community or all the issues. I'm here in Arizona with you, we're close to the border, and how we think about immigration. Let's be less certain all the time in our positions and our ideas, and that openness that comes with uncertainty allows me to hear other people, other ideas, and other perspectives, and can lead to new learning. And the new learning is what motivates me and what's important to me. So that this is what I think animates me and my rabbinate too, in a community, where sometimes it feels very monolithic in a synagogue. And you're trying to get people to see outside their four walls, outside their habits, outside my community norms, and exposing them to something. But in order to do that, you have to believe that you don't know. You have to believe in a little uncertainty in what we're doing. In that you can allow for new learning to emerge, even as you're rooted in old thinking.
Beautiful.
And I'll just end with one little Torah, because it's sweet to my heart. Our forefather Abraham, Avram was given a gift when he helped out the kings in their battles. And a priest, Melchizedek, came to Abraham to thank him. And he gave him a gift. I'm always conscious of gifts in the Bible. And the gift that he gave him, says the Torah, was lechem and yain, bread and wine. And there's a beautiful teaching that bread is always better when it's fresh. And wine, always better when it's aged. And I want to imagine that Melchizedek was handing Abraham these two gifts and saying to him, don't lose what is aged and seasoned and beautiful about our tradition and our ideas and the things that have animated us. But don't forget, you have to bring in something fresh, new learning. Always bring in new learning from the people and the encounters that you have in life. And you can only do that with a little bit of uncertainty that allows you to hold on to both pieces.
Wow. When you were talking about this last bit, I was thinking about my family is very privileged to foster kids, and the hardest time is not when they enter the home, but when they leave. Because we don't always know the judge is right? Did the family they're going back to really stop? Are they not going to abuse? Are they not going to neglect? Are they really equipped? And this bitachon of a faith of letting go of control, doing the part that we can do, and learning, letting go, and this midah, this trait of hitlamdut that you're talking about so beautifully, of a framework of learning in the world, that we are, part of our avodah, our service, is learning from everyone, and learning from every experience, and holding on to the old ideas we have, while allowing them to be refreshed by the new. So, follow Rabbi Uri Topolosky. If you live in the DC area, check out his shul, it's amazing, and all the other things he's doing. And really a great Rebbe to me, a great thinker, and someone we should all be following and inviting to our communities and engaging with. So,
well, thank you, Rav Shmuly. And again, I'll just say, please do visit us in Rockville, Maryland at our shul Kehilat Pardes. It would be our honor. But thank you so much for having me.